Have you ever thought about wanting to be free more than anything else? So this is the foundation of the whole teaching. It's all you need to know if you want to be free. So this means simply, I want to be free more than anything else. I want to be liberated more than anything else in life. More than anything, it's my heart's desire. I'll do anything for that goal. And I have no doubt about it, anywhere in my body, mind, and personality. So this is the foundation of everything. I've been speaking about this for 35 years. And how this came to be the foundation of my teaching was that a guy who had been a friend of mine became a student 35 years ago, and he had been a Buddhist monk for about 4 or 5 years. And when he was coming to my teachings, he was struggling, he was having trouble, so he came to talk to me. And I said, have you ever thought about wanting to be free more than anything else? And he'd been a Buddhist monk for 4 or 5 years. He said, no, I never thought about that. I went, are you kidding me? How can you become a Buddhist monk and not consider whether you want to be free or not? This was impossible for me to understand. Like I couldn't get it. It was craziness. So then it occurred to me that a lot of people don't do the obvious, apparently. They don't consider these things. Do I, whoever I am, want to be unconditionally liberated, absolutely, totally, completely, forever, here and now? It's a very basic, fundamental, absolute question that we address to ourselves, whoever we think we are. And based upon however you answer the question, it'll shift the direction of your life. Your relationship to life will change accordingly. I came to discover the hard way, after working with many people, that unless the answer is an unconditional, absolute, irrevocable, eternal yes, you'll never make it. And I also discovered that for the ego, for the separate self sense, this absolute, eternal, irrevocable, eternal yes, it feels like a death sentence, which it is. So this is why in my teaching work, I stress these basic foundational spiritual principles from the very beginning. Knowing that most people don't know what they're dealing with, it takes 10 years to understand what this means, for real. So the point I wanted to make this morning, which is carrying on from what we were sharing yesterday, is that this, if you think about, do I want to be free more than anything else, then you decide with passion, with liberated passion and awakened conviction, yes, I do. Enlightenment is all I want. I feel like the Buddha must have felt before he left his kingdom. I want unconditional liberation more than anything else. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what it's going to feel like. I want to be free, and I'll pay any price for it, no matter what, without making any excuses ever. It's the real deal. So what I wanted to say is that this is still the case, and I wanted to talk about this with all of you, if you want to talk about it. This is the foundation of everything. Most people think they get it until they run into trouble within themselves. They run up against their own blocks, their own fears, their own doubts, their own unconscious impulses. And they get smashed against a wall without being ready for it. So the cultivation of the absolute intention prepares you for all outcomes. If you're serious, you'll be ready because of this decision alone. It's blind, absolute conviction. Blind, and it's absolute. Leaves your ego in the dust. Unless this is very, very strong, you'll forget. You will lose your way eventually. Some karmic event will happen in your life and you'll get distracted from your spiritual interests and you'll lose your way, you'll fall off the path. As many people do. The idea is to stay on the path without losing it, not losing your way. So that's one point. It's foundational, it's absolute, and it's eternally true. And because it's such a simple concept, clarity of intention, I want to be free more than anything else. Some people say, yeah, that's obvious. It's so simple, it's so obvious. They know it's not. Not when it involves your soul, it's not so obvious at all. And this takes years to discover how profound this particular tenet actually is. That's why it's the foundation of everything. So, if we discuss the first tenet, the first principle of the teachings in alignment with what I was trying to share with you yesterday, which is the shifting nature of manifest reality. Manifest reality is shifting sands. As I said yesterday, as the Buddha said, everything's changing all the time. So manifest reality is an experience of constant change. Things are constantly shifting position. Things that were true 1 minute ago are no longer true because there's a change in position. constellation shifts. What was true before is not true now. Within the complexity of this ever-changing, shifting perspective, wanting to be free more than anything else also can be challenged. You might decide you want to be free unconditionally, absolutely, totally, and completely in one context. But if the context changes, you lose your balance. I wanted to be free, but in this context, I'm not sure even what it means anymore. So the cultivation of the intention to go all the way has to be stable, whether the context changes or shifts or not. And it will. Life is very precarious, unpredictable, so the context will change when you don't expect it to change. And the question is, will you be prepared for what you don't expect? Most of us aren't. So if the intention for liberation becomes your most profound aspiration, more stronger than anything else, and it takes years to cultivate, you have to understand that the difficulty with this first tenet is it's so intellectually simple. Most people think, that's easy. Any idiot can do that. But it's actually the most difficult one of all. It demands everything from you, no matter if the context changes or not. The point I want to make, which I find very fascinating, is that I was thinking about a lot of you, dawning on me how the first time people are exposed to these teachings, if they're receptive and open and interested, the teachings make sense to them and they say, yes, I accept this is true. I accept this is true because it's simple, it's profound, it makes sense, it makes sense, it makes sense. But what a lot of people don't realize, if these teachings, or if this Dharma makes sense to you because of their simple rational nature, the deep truth they hold, they actually become more demanding over time because of the life circumstances and the way things shift. This context of shifting context and shifting sands, and the precarious nature of being a vulnerable, confused individual. The demand of these principles will get stronger, demand more from you, not last over time. So the relationship to these principles can't be a static one. If you think you already understand it and you're doing it without thinking about it, you might be deluding yourself. So our relationship to these fundamental principles has to constantly be scrutinized by ourselves, to ourselves, and upgraded. Because your life is always changing, personal circumstances are constantly changing, and your attention is constantly being called in multiple directions all at the same time. So, why a lot of people find these teachings difficult to stick with over a long period of time is because they get distracted. It's an inward distraction because life is very complex and demanding. It's understandable. I'm not blaming anybody, I'm just making an observation. So what people don't realize is if you say yes to this first principle, and you mean it as much as you're capable of meaning it at this point in your life, you're saying yes to something that's going to be more demanding in a few years than it is now, in ways you can't even see now. It's the enormity of what this is what I wanted to share with you. And this is true for all these basic principles that we'll talk about this morning. So the awakened truths that you discover when you say yes to these absolute principles will increase in power and significance as you develop and as you live your life. They'll become more significant, more profound, and most importantly, more demanding. So wanting to be free more than anything else now is one thing, especially if you're a beginner. Sure, of course I want to be free more than anything else. Who wouldn't? But over time, these principles will get more demanding on you personally, for better and for worse. Nothing wrong with that's the way life works. But you have to be spiritually prepared for that, and most people aren't. Follow my point? So being in alignment with your own deepest aspirations requires constant reassessment between yourself and yourself and your teacher, however you want to look at it. You have to be constantly reassessing and checking on yourself in relationship to these fundamental distinctions. So you're always in alignment with the edge of your own development. A lot of people think because they said yes at one point, or they understood the teachings at one point, they say, yes, I did that. That's ancient history, baby. What are you doing now? What difference does it make? Follow my point? Choice. Choice is a very big theme in this teaching. I am the doer. You are the doer. Say, who's the I that's the doer? Whoever it is that makes the choices. If it's your ego, then it's your ego's fault. If it's your authentic self, then it's your authentic self's fault. I don't care who you think it is, as long as you take responsibility for who's ever making the choices. Somebody's making the choices, right? Somebody's making the choices. So whoever that is, we, I, you, and we, if we want to be free, have to take unconditional, absolute, irrevocable responsibility for the totality of the entity inside us who's making the choices, positive and negative. Ego or true self, it doesn't make a damn bit of difference. You just have to keep that covered. I'm the doer, which means I'm the chooser. It's the only way karma can be defeated. This is how you get the ego trapped. So the second principle of the teaching is the law of volitionality. This means, this calls us to, it says, I want to be free more than anything else. I want to be free more than anything else. So in order to be able to do that, I need to be willing to aspire to take unconditional responsibility for the sum totality of my karmic predicament, past, present, and future. So because I'm an evolutionary thinker, I'm an evolutionary idealist, I see our karmic stream as being part of a continuum that precedes and transcends this lifetime. So when I'm speaking in this context about taking responsibility for our karmic stream, it means for whatever happened before we got here, which is probably a hell of a lot, what we're doing now, the choices we're making right now, and the choices we're yet to make in the future. So this is a cultivation of a cosmic aspiration to take responsibility for the sum totality of our karmic predicament. And nobody can actually do this, it's too demanding. But we can aspire to do it. We can reach beyond our limitations and aspire to take unconditional responsibility for the sum totality of our karmic predicament, karmic stream, even though it's technically impossible to do. We can aspire to do the impossible. Unless we aspire to do that which is impossible, we'll never take a step forward into that which is new. So we have to reach beyond our limitations constantly. So this is a very big ask, and it has to do with the way you think about yourself and your karma. You have to aspire to be unconditionally responsible for yourself and all of your complexity and confusion and contradictions and paradoxes that make up the self. You want to own the whole confusing package, including the spiritual impulse, your worst mistakes, and everything in between. You want to own it. It's all me. It'll help you to take responsibility for yourself and become self-responsible, autonomous, finally. You want to think very big. You have to think beyond limits, and this is a very important one. A lot of people think they want to be autonomous and want to have free agency, but you can't be autonomous and have free agency, really, at a deep level, unless you're willing to take full responsibility for the totality of your karmic predicament to the best of your ability, and really mean it. You'll be leaving things out of the picture you may or may not see. So this is like you or me as the vulnerable individual aspiring before God to take responsibility for the sum totality of who we are in an evolving cosmos. So it's a huge commitment. And it's a very heroic commitment if you mean business. So to repeat what I said, it's not really possible to do, but we're aspiring to do the impossible so we can develop and grow. You aspire to do the impossible. That's how evolution, we catalyze evolution that way, because we're reaching way beyond our limits. It's intentionally too much, we know it. But unless you reach that far, you're going to make a lot of mistakes that you wouldn't make otherwise. Right? And in the same way as with the first tenet of the teaching, what it's going to mean to take unconditional responsibility for your karmic stream, past, present, and future, in the present moment, is going to be harder in 5 years than it is today. Probably. So when we embrace the evolutionary context, we want to realize that the context is changing all the time, is being influenced by karma, by past and present circumstances, by unforeseen events. So the ground is always shifting. This is not a static endeavor. The only thing that's static in this enlightenment context is the ground of being, the uncreated, the unborn. That's the only thing that's static in reality. Everything else is changing and moving and shifting. Nothing else is static. So keeping this in mind, we unconsciously believe that all kinds of things are never going to change, but they always do. When we embrace the evolutionary context, we want to embrace the truth that the ground under our feet is constantly changing. So our metaposition, our own personal philosophy, metaphysics, has to embrace that truth. So it's kind of like dancing on moving balls all the time without falling down, hopefully. And in the midst of all this, everything that's changing and shifting, you want to do your best. That's why I was saying yesterday, we want to do our best. We're not trying to be perfect, but we want to do our best. So this, if we want to do our best, it means you have to do the spiritual work. It'll make it possible for us to be aware enough to be able to respond to this kind of complexity every single day. A lot of people in their ignorance and unconsciousness assume that reality is not as complex as it really is. It's not as unpredictable and not as dangerous as it actually is. And also, a lot of people don't want to deal with the karmic implications of being conscious. The more conscious you become, the implications get bigger and bigger and bigger. I keep on reminding all of you that it's you. It's you, baby. It's not him, it's you. And unless you have a big heart, and you're really working on letting go of your ego every day, you won't be able to handle it. So a lot of people in their arrogance make the complexity of the totality of reality less than it is. Less of a challenge, less of a burden. Just because they can't handle the spiritual burden that it presents itself to be. Just because you don't want to face it doesn't mean it doesn't make it less than it really is. So the enormity of what we're dealing with here, the more you understand this, the more the nature of reality reveals itself to you. It doesn't get smaller, it only gets bigger. It never goes in the other direction. It's always, oh my God, I had no idea. It's never, oh, I didn't realize it was that small. It's always only, oh my God, I had no idea. It's bigger and bigger and bigger, more overwhelming, more overwhelming, more overwhelming. Can you take it? Most people can't take too much reality. I got enough problems of my own. So the evolutionary context brings the reality of our appreciation of constant change into the picture. So these teachings are trying to tell us what's the perfect position to take if you want to be liberated. That's what these teachings will tell you, exactly what you need to do to take the perfect position in relationship to the change. The position, you can take a perfect position in relationship to it in order to save your soul and be able to consciously evolve. But you have to be aware that it's not a static process. It's not something, oh yes, I've done that. I did that 10 years ago. Very good. Just because you did it 10 years ago doesn't mean anything about today, baby. So the point here is that the demands on your soul will get more, will grow, they won't become less. This is not something you can just take care of and be done with. It's because the nature of what we're dealing with, which is the sum totality of all of reality. You gotta let it in when I'm saying it's kind of overwhelming. So, the demand will increase. The third tenet of the teaching is the hardest one. It's very difficult to practice, called, if you want to be free more than anything else, you want to take responsibility for the sum totality of your karmic stream, past, present, and future. And if you want to do that, you need to be able to practice to the best of your ability in all your imperfection, facing everything and avoiding nothing. Takes care of all the psychotherapy now. So I can say I don't believe in psychotherapy, but listen to this. This is psychotherapy when it's well practiced. So this one is the hardest one because it says face everything and avoid nothing. Very difficult to do that. It's ultimately demanding. But you have to be willing to try to do this to the best of your ability and all your imperfection every day if you're going to make any spiritual progress. This is shadow work. For people that are interested in shadow work. You don't need help. You just have to face yourself. And use all the complexity of your everyday, day-to-day experience to help you see into your own unconscious motives. Face everything and avoid nothing. It's very, 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 very hard. Most people don't do it, and nobody can do it absolutely anyway. Nobody can do this absolutely, but some people are much better at it than others. And it has to do with the sincerity of our interest in liberation. Because if you can start facing everything and avoiding nothing, you're going to be very humiliated by your own stupidity and unconsciousness. Small-mindedness, pettiness of the ego, it's humiliating and frustrating. But if you want to be free, you'll do it because you don't want to torture other people with your own unconscious motives and aspirations and tyrannical intensity. And this facing everything and avoiding nothing is obviously has to be done every day. There's no relief from facing the truth about yourself, because the self never goes to sleep, so you have to be very, very vigilant in relationship to yourself. And this is very difficult to do, but you have to want to do this between yourself and yourself every day, to the best of your ability. Nobody's perfect. Everybody's going to fail at this. But if you want to clean up your act and do better, I always say we have to do our best. If you want to be sincere about doing your best, practicing facing everything and avoiding nothing is foundational. It's foundational and it's hard work. But it's the only way through the maze of unconsciousness and confusion. Also, if you want to cultivate the capacity for agency and autonomy, profound independence, self-respect and inner freedom, a lot of it depends upon your success in practicing this tenet. You're getting to know yourself better than anyone else knows you. Becoming really self-responsible and self-aware. So you want the inner observer, your own inner observer, the best part of yourself is paying attention to what you're doing, to be on duty all the time. And even if you're paying attention all the time to the best of your ability, you still act out of unconscious motives anyway. At least you'll be more aware of it than you were before. So this is eternal Dharma. And these three principles, clarity of intention, the law of volitionality, and this facing everything and avoiding nothing, are all you need to know to be free in the context of what I call personal enlightenment. Everything you need to do, all the Dharma you need to understand and practice is in these three principles. All the fundamental Dharma is here. If you put that together with the meditation Dharma, what it means to assume no relationship to the content of consciousness, plus these three principles, you're on your way. You know everything you need to know. Then you just have to practice them. Everything is there. Because everything's changing all the time. You're living in a world of shifting sands and manifest reality. Facing everything and avoiding nothing is going to enable you to become aware of all these changes that are happening all the time. You're shifting your position, shifting your position, shifting your position, shifting your perspective, changing your opinion, changing your ideas about life, reality, other people, and yourself, most importantly. I used to have a saying, it was something like, always leaning forward, slightly off balance. Always leaning forward, slightly off balance, because it's so overwhelming. You have to be willing to lean forward, slightly off balance all the time in order to create the room inside yourself to see all this. And once again, the stakes get higher as time goes by, because if you've been practicing, if you claim to be practicing facing everything and avoiding nothing for 2 months, nobody's going to expect any great insights or change, because you're just a baby. But if you're practicing facing everything and avoiding nothing for 5 years, with diligence, you should be a changed person to some degree. Right? In terms of self-knowledge. When people gain self-knowledge, I'm not talking about self-knowledge in the sense of true self and authentic self, but self-knowledge of their emotional and psychological complexity, they change. They wake up. They become a much better person, a much more conscious person, a much more available person, a much kinder person. Because you're stopping to resist, avoid, and deny reality about yourself, and reality itself changes you. Follow? Paying attention to what you say and what you do, what you say and what you actually do. Self-inquiry, self-observation. What's the truth about the nature of your relationships with other people and yourself and your own emotions? Your own thoughts, your own fears, your own desires. Where are you really at? It's very difficult for us to see ourselves clearly. I think it's impossible for anybody to see themselves clearly. But we can see ourselves more clearly. We want to look at the whole picture. How am I doing? Are we doing better? Are we doing our best? We all know if we're doing our best or not. Are we doing our best, or could we try and make a more sincere effort to do better? Now, the difficult thing here is that in this kind of self-analysis. It's not being done in a personal context, it's being done in an impersonal context. Context here in which is facing everything and avoiding nothing is because I want to be free. So if you want to be free, your relationship to facing everything and avoiding nothing will be different than if you're just making yourself feel guilty about something. Because I want to be free, I need to see the truth about myself. So that's the guiding principle here, is the desire for freedom itself, the aspiration for freedom. Not self-flagellation or self-hatred or shame and guilt. That's an ego trip. I'm such a bad person. I'm not talking about that. Yesterday what I was calling the negative ego is a kind of masochist. Someone who enjoys to hurt themselves. They enjoy self-inflicting pain. So the negative ego in many people is a masochist, likes to torture. It's like self-torture. I'm a bad person, I'm a miserable person, I'm a guilty person, I'm a shameful person, I'm a terrible person. And they feel like shit. But the negative ego delights in this bad feeling in some kind of twisted, unhealthy, unwholesome way. I'm not talking about anything like that. Nothing to do with any of that. That's self-torture, and I don't believe in any of it. It's because the aspiration for liberation is a very mature, high aspiration. So you have to begin with not only self-respect, but respect for your own humanity, and respect for our humanity, and respect for the spiritual quest in itself. So it means you're trying to do something big and noble and beautiful. And part of that quest might be painful, but you'll see it in a bigger context. It's not about feeling guilty about anything. It's about wanting to see the truth so you can be a better person. Make sense? So in contemplation, we want to have the right relationship to the mind, to our emotions. If that's contemplation. Meditation, we want no relationship. One is the practice of contemplation. The other is the practice of meditation. So if you're going to practice meditation, have no relationship to the mind, no matter what the mind is saying. It doesn't matter what it's saying, no relationship. Because you made a decision that you're going to do that. If you want to practice contemplation, then you do that. And then you want to understand what's the right relationship to all this confusion. What is the right relationship to all this mental confusion? To all of this emotional suffering and pain. What's the right relationship to it? No relationship to the mind. And you have to believe me that if you give it enough time, it will straighten out your thinking. It will make your thinking more complex, more simple, more profound. It will help you to think more deeply. By stopping being involved in thinking, it will help you to think in a much more meaningful way. So it's not like thinking is wrong or bad, it just is we're out of control. It's like we give the mind too much attention, it starts becoming this kind of machine that's moving way too fast, it's making us cognitively nauseous. So be dedicated to thinking less. That's the whole thing. I get the sense from when you're describing your experience that you're paying very close attention to these different events happening inside you and drawing conclusions about what you think they mean. So I would encourage you for the time you're here on the retreat not to do that anymore. It may happen, but just disregard it. Say, right now it just doesn't matter. Just let it go. Let it be more dismissed. Then you'll discover space will open up, as I've been saying, where you don't know. You don't know what this is. You don't know what that is. You don't know what it means. Ah, what a relief. You will feel better. The problem, as I said, is a lot of smart guys like you. You're smart. So smart guys realize that they're gifted, intellectually gifted. So if you're intellectually gifted, the ego can be invested in the gift. So if you're intellectually gifted, you have to learn how to not be so invested in that talent. That's why I had this strange experience of meeting a lot of, especially in the integral world, a lot of really, really smart people who are trapped in their own experience of cognition, the complexity of their own cognition. So if you don't pay attention, they can seem to be very brilliant and wise, but you realize it's just a cognitive layer. Even if they're very smart and they understand a lot of complex concepts and how they work together, their self is not free in all that complexity, they're not liberated. And the problem when the ego identifies with intelligence, it's very nasty. It's a big problem a lot of people have now, especially with the AI world coming up. It makes people very weird. Creates a kind of distortion in the personality. So we want to learn how to be smart, but not attached to being smart. So that's why I keep saying the meta position of the teaching is, I don't already know. That's the solution. I don't already know, but I want to know. Make sense? Because you see, saying, I don't already know, but I want to know, it gives us a free pass. I don't already know, so you can start from zero. You don't have to already know a damn thing. So it frees you from carrying the burden of all that knowledge. It's like you can put down the weight of all that knowledge. But you don't have to give up your intellectual curiosity, which is positive, at all. You just want to start from a different place, which is a place of innocence and inner freedom. Right? There's no spiritual bypassing here at all. But the spiritual bypassing comes in and say, yeah, I understand all this, but I want to be unconditionally free of all this garbage. I listened to a satsang the other day of another teacher who's here in town. He's teaching a retreat. He's a powerful guy. So the two people that invited him were students of my guru, Punjaji. So he said in the introduction, I was a student of Punjaji. But I couldn't speak about my emotional problems with Punjaji because when I brought them up to him, he said, it's all samsara, forget it. And he said, with this new teacher, we can embrace both the absolute and we can also deal with our emotional problems. And he was saying, you can speak to this teacher about your emotional problems. He'll be there for you. He'll hear you. So they thought this was a very beautiful thing. This is a good response to the narrow-minded position of the extreme transcendence position of Punjaji. So I was thinking when I heard this, yes, it's true, Punjaji was a radical transcender, and he knew the difference between samsara and nirvana, like most people don't have any idea what the difference really is. But he really meant it. When he said, this is all garbage, don't have anything to do with it, he meant it. And I think few people have the spiritual audacity and spiritual enthusiasm to really be able to appreciate what that means. It takes so much courage and full-hearted spiritual intentionality to truly let go of all of our psychological craziness and madness. We take the drama of the ego so seriously. So he's saying, forget all that. Forget all that. It's all samsara. From the perspective of nirvana, it is all just samsara, which means it doesn't mean anything. From the absolute perspective, it has no meaning, it has no substance, it has no validity, it has no truth. None. From the perspective of the absolute truth. How many people can hold that truth? For most people, that's just an intellectual distinction. They don't really feel it. So Punjaji was one of the rare spiritual masters who lived in that state of utter transcendence. And he could transmit it to most people, but most people couldn't hold on to it because they were so screwed up in their personal life. So I thought there's something tragic about this situation because he could transmit enlightenment and nirvana to people like no one else could. And then we have to be grateful. That's the rarest of rare gifts. Because you have to have the experience of seeing that samsara is unreal from the perspective of the absolute reality of nirvana. Be able to understand what enlightenment is all about for real on its own terms. And to have the experience of seeing it doesn't mean a damn thing about the truth of life. All of your pain and your suffering and all the tragic nature, the tragic twists and turns of your personal story, from the perspective of nirvana consciousness, have no significance at all. If the ego goes, whoa, really? No significance at all? Zero. That's the foundation of liberation. That's the foundation of liberation. So the reason why I put these foundational psychological principles in my teaching was not because I think that our personal egoic story is important for its own sake, but I think unless we can get very clear in our relationship to our own psychological confusion, we're going to make a mess out of our own life. So this is not about validating the ego story, it's about finding out how to clean up our own story, clean up our own relationship to life, and be liberated. We talked yesterday about the three selves, the ego, the soul, and the true self. So if you're an enlightenment practitioner, the only thing that means everything to you is the true self. That's where you've committed yourself to the absolute truth. You are aware of the relative truth. You are aware of it. You have compassion for the relative truth about yourself and other people, but you don't care about it. You care about liberation. I care about liberation. I care about liberation, the light of liberation. unconditional, absolute, once and for all, forever, totally free, unimaginable cosmic freedom. It's the only thing I care about. I don't care about anybody's problems. I don't lack compassion. I've suffered also. I still do sometimes, but I don't care about it. I care about inner freedom and enlightenment. And I think that if you really want to be enlightened, it can't be part of an integrated package. Here I'm practicing enlightenment for a few hours a day, then in a few hours a day I'm practicing integral psychotherapy, and I'm practicing this, I'm practicing that. It looks good on paper, but it doesn't really work. Because if you're going to be spiritually free, you've got to let go of the whole damn thing. You level up your soul. You've got to walk away from the story. And nothing less than that's going to be enough to be enlightened. You see this energy that comes through me, it's because I let go at that level. I'm not doing anything. It happens by itself. It's because I let go at that deepest level. I gave my body and mind to that energy. My guru said to me, Andrew, I want you to take responsibility for the work. So he knew I needed to be devoted to what he was teaching me and he was giving me more than anything else. And I just said, okay. I didn't know what I was saying yes to, but I just said, okay. So it's the letting go of the story, and our belief in the reality of the story is what awakens us to enlightened awareness permanently. Now that being said, as I've been saying, if we don't face everything and avoid nothing and take unconditional responsibility for our unconscious impulses, we're going to mess things up. So we need to do the psychological work. We need to do the psychological work, but the reasons we want to do it is so our liberation can be unfettered, unobstructed by ego, unconscious egoic impulses. Now I feel, to me, the truth of liberation is so glorious. It's so beautiful. Nothing relative could ever compare to it. So at a certain point, you stop caring about your psychological problems. And I think we all have to get to a point where we're clear enough about ourselves to stay out of our own way, not to make a mess. That's enough. It's not endlessly fascinating to kind of study ourselves psychologically. A lot of people these days are endlessly interested in the shadow. I don't know how they could be so interested in it, because it's not that interesting once you get what it is. It is what it is. It's not the light of illumination. It's just patterns, unconscious patterns, full of unprocessed emotions. They're relatively real. They're not absolutely real. So what I want people to experience is the ecstatic joy of unconditional liberation. And if you experience it, if you taste it, if you feel it, if you know it, nothing in the relative world can compare to that truth, to that experience. So when you experience that kind of joy, that kind of happiness, that kind of liberation, you want to spend as little time as you need to take care of your unconsciousness. You're doing it so you can really do your best. Because if you don't face your unconscious patterns, you're not going to be able to do your best. You'll be sabotaging yourself like most people do, right? So we don't want to do that, so we have to do the psychological work. We have to do it. My guru was a mess. Personally, he was a Jesus. He had a lot of heavy karma. But what was so confusing is that in spite of this heavy shit karma, this outrageous, he was really a wild man. Very self-indulgent, out of control. But miraculously, and in a strange way, his liberation existed in a completely different category of his self. And it was radiant and liberated and passionate and wild and untouched by his own personal karma. So it seemed to me that one doesn't cancel the other. So his statement, which I constantly repeat, as nirvana has no beginning and no end, so samsara has no beginning and no end, is my mantra. Because as I constantly repeating, share this truth every time I teach. Nirvana is the self-contained world space. Nirvana is its own dimension of reality, as is samsara. So from an enlightenment point of view, it's not a matter of working out one problem or another. It's sort of getting out of that hell realm. It's a hell realm. It's like going to hell. Hell is a self-contained universe. So when you wake up to nirvana, you literally go into a different realm of reality, different dimension of reality, where hell is nowhere to be found. In that state, it's a state. And the individual makes the choice. Very few people make that choice. But the Buddha was very clear. He wanted to get the hell out of samsara at any cost. So the most profound realizers are uncompromisingly committed to nirvana. So now that we have a greater understanding of human psychological complexity, we want to learn how to deal with it in the most efficient way possible. Not deny to the point of the fact that we're avoiding anything. This is why I say here, face everything and avoid nothing. So I'm not teaching escapism. Now the problem with a lot of transcenders is, more often than not, they deny that samsara exists to the point of self-deception. That's bad. So we're actually in a position, developmentally, to be able to say that samsara is an illusion to the degree that we can actually defeat it in ourselves. So that it makes it a little bit more difficult to make these throwaway statements. Follow my point? So this is an integrally upgraded version of postmodern enlightenment. Nothing's being avoided. But I'm carrying the flag for enlightenment, which most people have forgotten about. Everybody's got so absorbed in this darkness that comes from shadow that they forgot about the light. When you speak about the light of enlightened awareness, they say, yeah, but. No buts, baby. Yeah, but. It's the wrong party. Beloved Ken is a very complex person. He's a very complex person. He's absorbed so much of the sum totality of reality in his thinking that he speaks out of different sides of his mouth sometimes. So he said to me this beautiful phrase 15 years ago. He said, yes, Andrew, I agree. All therapists are pimps for samsara. He said it, I didn't. And when he said it, he meant it. So he's saying psychotherapists are pimps for samsara, for ignorance, for stupidity, for unenlightenment. So my understanding of Ken's position is that he appreciates the absolute nature of what I've been speaking about on its own terms. He understands the feeling, the knowing, the exuberance, the thrill. He appreciates it on its own terms. That's why he adores Adida so much. Because no matter how crazy Adida is or was, his enlightenment could never be denied. And Ken was not going to deny the truth of his enlightenment just because he was a crazy guy. Ken's mind and capacity to appreciate the complexity of the human predicament is big enough to fully appreciate both. For most people, their thinking is too dualistic. They can't contain these contradictions. They can't contain these paradoxes. He can hold the paradox without contradicting himself at all. And yet he's also very aware of human psychological complexity and the significance of psychotherapy and the development of psychological worldview and why it's so important and how much we've learned about human development. So he appreciates both fully. And that's his gift as kind of a transpersonal genius. He speaks about enlightenment with great passion and its unconditional nature with great passion. And he speaks about psychological development with great passion. He appreciates both fully. I'm an enlightenment teacher, so I'm very biased towards one side of that picture. He's not. You know, as Ken often says himself, most people can't hold more than one perspective at a time. It sounds like a contradiction, even though it's not. Very few people can hold two perspectives at the same time, let alone 3 or 4. So most people don't understand him, in my opinion, for that reason. No, but this is why I'm saying in this teaching, if you want to experience total transcendence, you have to assume the position of no relationship to body, mind, personality, world, and cosmos. Absolutely, unconditionally, radically, and totally. And you have to enter into samadhi and don't come out. It's total transcendence. No relationship to body, mind, personality, world, and universe. But the minute you come out of the state of total transcendence, you have to have some kind of relationship to body, mind, personality, world, and cosmos. That's not total transcendence, then there's a relationship, a dualistic relationship between self and body, mind, personality, world, and cosmos. So you're entering into the world of duality then. There's no avoiding. It's not wrong or bad, it's just part of nature. In total transcendence, there's no relationship. There's no duality. Engaging with the complexity of relative duality is a big part of what we're all faced with every day. You see, a lot of people have this fantasy about enlightenment, like it's like winning it's like winning the lottery and you win the prize, and then all of your problems are over forever. I'm trying to teach all of you guys in a way in which you realize your life will get more complicated and more demanding and more beautiful at the same time. What are you living for? So I'm living for the highest truth in my experience, which is total transcendence. That's what I'm living for. But I think that what people will begin to feel when you kind of straighten yourself out is that people become aware of the purity of your soul, which is your motives. People start to feel what your motivation is, what's driving you. If you're not a corrupt person, you don't lie to yourself or other people. that you are who you appear to be. You'll become a beautiful person. You become a beautiful, trustworthy person who's the real deal. But in my understanding, as we awaken more intensively, as we awaken in a more intense and profound way, we fall in love with manifest reality. We want to participate more deeply, more profoundly in it because we know that manifest reality needs our help. So it means we want to be here instead of wanting to escape and never wanting to experience pain. The desire to be here, not for personal reasons anymore. That's what it means to be a bodhisattva. Our spiritual practice, our spiritual commitment, through spiritual work, hard spiritual work, our spiritual sadhana increases our power of agency, freedom to make choices. So we're not totally trapped in the karma of the body, mind, and personality. Usually we're so trapped in that karma, we don't have any access to freedom of choice. And even if the 5% is there, we don't even know where it is. But if we're living the spiritual life earnestly, with great commitment, we develop the capacity for greater agency. So a spiritually realized person should seem to you like more creating the world that they're living into their own choices. They're not just living in someone else's world. How I think it works is that at the beginning it seems like I'm doing something. But as we develop, as we become spiritually more developed, the distinction between grace and our intention becomes very indistinct, becomes the same thing. If you're totally surrendered to the God principle and you're committed to transcending the small self no matter what, the boundaries become very ambiguous and you can't tell where you end and grace begins. It becomes truly non-dual. But we should stay humble and say, it's grace, not me. As you're fighting the war in the manifest world of duality, part of it will be the grace that you've awakened to that's carrying you forward, and also your own heroic intentions. It would be a mix of both. But the fact that I am sick isn't stopping me at all. What's the role of grace, spontaneous grace, versus personal effort in the response to kind of the challenges of living in samsara? And I said at the beginning, it feels like you're doing something. But if you're truly awakened at a certain point, you won't be able to know the difference anymore. It'll all become one flow, one non-dual unfolding. Well, I don't really know. I think of the soul as a metaphysical organ, container of karma and momentum, karmic momentum. And the soul has self-nature to it. The soul, compared to the ego, feels like me. The ego feels like this is me. But the soul feels more like me. When people have a soul awakening, when they come upon some kind of memory or some kind of intimacy experience, they awaken to their soul, they start becoming very vulnerable. The feeling of the soul sense feels more truly me than my ego. But when you awaken to the true self is recognized to be 1,000,000 times more who you are than the soul and the ego combined. Infinite depth. So the thing is, the soul will feel as real as it feels before you awaken to the deeper part of yourself. You awaken to the deeper part of yourself, you're aware of the soul, but it doesn't have as much significance as it did before you discovered the true self. So I'm very appreciative of the way a lot of you are responding to the teaching. The more everybody can respond, the better. There's a passive dimension to this, receptivity. When being passive means you're receptive, vulnerability, openness, and receptivity. It means you're paying attention, you're listening, you're taking it seriously, you're feeling it. Half the process. The other process is responding to that which you feel is most important. Reacting. Are you alive or dead? So that if you're alive, then you will react or respond to that which you recognize to be most important, to that which you feel most touched by, to that which you feel is most important for you, most important in general. You will react. So it's not good if you feel touched and moved. You have important questions that you're not pursuing because you need to act on your own spiritual interest. You don't play it safe. Passively awake and alert. Learn how to actively respond. That's how you develop. If you don't respond, you're not going to develop. You might understand things, but you won't develop. You only develop by responding. Responding is an action. So it goes back to what I was saying about no relationship versus the right relationship. No relationship to listening is being very passive, taking it seriously. And reacting to what you feel is important will help you to develop. Have the courage to respond to what you feel is most important. Have the courage to do it, then you'll be able to develop and become more awake. Follow? Don't create a space where you can be invisible. Be willing to stand out and be seen. Have the courage to be seen. Stand your ground. God love you more. You have the guts to be true. There's consequences for going so deep. You know that, everybody. You're all aware of that? It's like making love is not karma-free either. There's always karmic consequences for your experiences of radical intimacy and truth. So just know that.